Hello and welcome to the My Spectrum Life podcast. I'm Jessica, an autism with mom, and with me is my good friend Kelsey, a registered. Oh, I forgot the letters. What do they mean again?
Hi guys. Hey Jess, thanks for having me. A registered behavior technician is what an
There
RBT
it is.
stands for.
Ah, was just having a little brain thingy. Anyway, how have you been?
Been doing pretty good. Wrapping up the school year.
Oh
So
yeah,
we're teachers' last day is June 4th. So I'm
yeah.
looking forward to the summer.
We wrapped up the 27th, so I was happy to be
Lucky.
officially done the 27th. But yeah, so it's been a very interesting year, moving states in the middle of at the beginning of the school year, I should say, and then
Right.
finally getting everything done. But yeah, but it's been good. I'd say it's
Good.
been a good. And so I'm looking forward to summer too, even though it kind of is going to be an interesting summer.
It's gonna be
Um
unique.
yes, it is. Especially with everything being canceled that kids usually do in the summer.
hmm
Um I hadn't even thought about that until it started popping up that, this camp is canceled, or like from our youth group,
Right.
we've been doing Zoom meetings with Curtis, which Zoom is very interesting. Yeah. The wanting to do your hair all the time and makes funny faces. At least that's what my son likes to do. I don't know about any of you, the rest of you who have had to navigate the Zoom calls with teachers and such, but yeah, but they kept telling us, "Oh, we think it's going to happen," and then, "No, sorry guys, it's canceled."
Right.
And so, just see everybody's faces fall on, the things that they've been planning on doing this summer is kind of rough, but I think though we can still have a great summer.
You can. I do know that Surfers Healing down in Folly canceled theirs in August as well.
Yeah.
But they're looking at different ways to maybe still bring people together. And
Mhm.
I've been following their Facebook posts in their Facebook group and maybe doing some t-shirts or maybe doing online things, something. They're figuring out something. And it's pretty cool to see some of those ideas get thrown around
Mhm.
between maybe a photo shoot, maybe something like this. But
Yeah.
it's kind of sad to see.
Yeah, it is. Ah, yes, Jennifer, we can make a list of all the reasons Zoom is challenging for kids with executive functioning issues.
Middle school and high school kids don't understand the perspective of where the video camera is supposed to go. I've had to
That's
tell
like
them
number
to
one.
either, yeah, I'm like, sit up in bed, let me see your face. I don't want to see your comforter. Mute yourself, please. Stop talking. Mute yourself as I'm trying to do this. Oh, Miss K,
Yes.
and they're like, I'm like, unmute yourself. No, the list can go on. It's great. It's great. I love it. I
Yes.
love
Oh
it.
my goodness. But it's crazy how this time with things like Zoom calls and stuff has been eye opening. I
It
mean,
has been.
yeah, I mean, so we took our 2 week break, and I'll just before I'll say, part of the reason we took a 2 week break was I had a hip replacement surgery. Which crazy thing, in and out of surgery with a new hip on the same day. It was outpatient surgery, which is amazing. I mean, medical things have come so far in certain areas.
In certain areas.
In certain areas. So, within that time frame when I was coherent, I will say coherent, because there was some time that I was not coherent. Um, I got to pull out one of my books that had been suggested to me on executive functioning. Called, let's see if I can get this around here. The Impulsive Disorganized Child: Solutions for Parenting Kids with Executive Functioning Difficulties by James Forgan and Mary Ann Ritchie. Wow. all I can say is, wow, this has been, I checked it out a
Mhm.
long time ago, and it was the first time that we had, talked about executive functioning skills. I had written, some of my notes, and then I finally got the book. And, I don't think you can see it, but I'm like, underlining everything and making notes and all this kind of thing because it's actually really so far, I've found some really applicable things and been made aware of some things that I was not, um, I didn't really know about before.
Like what?
Um, have you well, one of the things that I am seeing that now for me, they're saying in this book that a lot of your executive functioning skills will be with mainly ADHD and autism.
Okay.
But I'm thinking, okay, but my son has both. So we have both of these fighting against each other, it
Mhm.
seems like. And a lot of the things that I took for granted of things that I thought that he should just get, I now understand why he's not getting them. It's because those executive functioning skills are so lacking. And it seems that for to have both of these conditions together makes
Mhm.
it almost worse, I would say, um, to be able to deal with because it doesn't make sense why some of these things are coming up and he's 12 years old.
Mhm.
Um, but I have been, I mean, they had two or three different definitions that they went over, um, but they put it into. Well, I think I read this now that I look at. One of the things, though, I thought was very interesting was that as a result of the neuroimaging studies and extensive research,
Okay.
according to the authors, ADHD is no longer considered mainly a disruptive behavior disorder, but a developmental neurological disorder related to a person's self-management system, which then makes sense as to why you go to now. Um, in South Carolina, we were at the developmental pediatric department of a main hospital.
Interesting.
And so, more recently, I finally got a call back and we'll be able to go to the developmental department at a major hospital here
That's
for an
interesting.
ADHD eval. I'm like, it didn't dawn on me until I had read this. And then I
Right.
get, oh, yeah, we were at yeah. It's kind of one of those things where you start putting all the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, and how they link together and how the brain I just I'm blown.
I know it's just
Wow.
it's kind of some of these things that it's like, okay, so now what do I do with this information? How do I
Right.
keep going?
Right.
Um, and I've just been, you know, really I've been it's been interesting to find out more about exactly what these things are and how we can help with them.
Okay.
You know, we say that, for instance, we say that with a child with autism can be very rigid in their schedules.
Correct.
And here they're also saying it for a child with EF difficulties. EF, I'll let you all know, EF is what they refer to as, they'll abbreviate it as executive function instead of having to write it out 50 billion times. So it's chalk it up to another one of those alphabet soup things. Um,
Right.
but to have those routines that in place that you
Mhm.
do day after day after day, and then they become ingrained, actually helps a child with EF difficulties. So the routines, and then that, how one of the things with ABA I remember is that if we're getting ready to change things up,
Mhm.
you give them a few minute warning before ahead of time.
Mhm.
That's something that helps with EF difficulties.
So it helps with
So,
the working memory, correct?
mhm. and the ability to be flexible on transition. So, yeah. I've been kind of a little bit in shock of doing this, and now I'm like, okay, so it is actually very important for me to make those routine charts, the visual routine charts, you know, to help understand for Curtis to understand what he needs to do next. What have you been finding in your research?
Really quick, I'll tell you in a sec. I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Do you see it as some of the triggers for some of his meltdowns? Now
I'm
going
thinking
back
so.
and looking at it, do you see some of the triggers? Do you like does he know that it's some of his own triggers? Because I know he's pretty conscious of his own.
I don't know that we've ever really sat down and been able to work with somebody who is as knowledgeable about the EF difficulties, because I think those EF difficulties then will also, I mean, they'll play in with those, textbook autistic traits. Then we have the EF difficulties in ADHD, and then we throw in all those sensory issues with sensory processing disorder.
Oh wow.
And I'm astounded, it's one of those things that after knowing all these things and having this opened up, I'm beginning to step back and say, okay, there's a lot that these guys are dealing with.
Yeah, and how some of it's not behavior. It's actually, I don't know how to understand this. I don't know what's going on. Help.
Yeah. And, for us as parents to see that and then have to, sit down and just sit down and really try to figure out, okay, like, in ABA, you always say, what is that antecedent to your behavior? What is it? Think about what happened before and see what you can do. And so now you've got to look at antecedents that are from executive functioning skills, from sensory issues, depending on what your child's diagnosis is.
Right.
So it's kind of getting me to think and try to figure out what exactly is going on. And actually, one of the most craziest things, they talked about how, a lot of the skills that you have, EF skills, are they usually come up with children with ADHD. And it talked about how some parents got the diagnosis and they ran out and got an ADHD coach.
What's that?
I was like, what's an ADHD coach?
Because that is not common in the state of South Carolina. Not at all.
I'd never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Not even when I got my trainings. What is it?
Well, apparently, I guess it's a life coach that has some training with ADHD.
So what do they help with?
I guess they help with like time management and things like that, which is part of the planning skills that sometimes you don't have with executive functioning skills.
Right.
I was overall, they actually listed, and I know that when you go into trying to find all the different executive functioning skills, you're going to have
overlap
in your lists between all the places, but it seems like a good portion of it has to do with planning, with time management, with working memory,
correct,
with impulsivity,
all your frontal lobe,
yeah,
your front part,
which is just and it's one of those things where it's like, oh Lord, please don't let him want to play football and get a head injury because we're in trouble.
It's like, nope, 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 nope. We're good. We're good. No.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Oh goodness.
Mm.
So what did your research bring you to find?
So I actually did a whole bunch of research through scholarly, sorry, excuse me, research through some of the databases that I have access through Winthrop and Arizona State University, both schools I attended. And I was curious because sometimes textbooks don't give you enough information, or if they do, it's just like this little one fact from 1994. So you got to remember, IDA came out in 1975. It's not many years. It hasn't even been a century yet. And how quickly all this information has been developing. So when I talk about some of this research, it does come back from 2002 or 2012. Yeah, that's so many years back, but that's technically still relevant because they haven't updated yet. One of the journals that I found actually came from the journal Child of Psychology and Psychiatry. It's on the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, because ADHD and autism used to be diagnosed underneath a psychology side before it became its own category and things like that. So a lot of your information is not going to come from a behavior science. It's actually going to come from the psychology, like as you're talking about why you go in the hospitals to be able to get some of that help that Curtis needs.
Right, exactly.
Just the way it comes from that. But this article is from 2004. It's about 16 years old. And this article actually talked about executive functioning skills, and I'm going to call it EF, the differences and which one is it more prevalent in with autism with ADHD, or just ADHD. They took about over 186 children, 68 of them with autism, and then the rest of them with either ADHD or comorbid. Comorbid means two diagnoses in one. And they were aging from 6 to 12 years old. So you kind of have to think about this. And they actually did this article to update the one in 1997.
Okay. So this is further updating information.
Correct.
That they found. Okay.
So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you the conclusion. So they said that the study indicates that children with high functioning autism exhibit more generalized and profound problems with EF tasks than to children with ADHD. Okay. And this is why they were talking about autism and ADHD used to fall underneath the category of EF deficit because it ended up being it's what was prevalent or what was shown a lot of times before they were able to condense and be able to have better testing to better diagnose. So this means that with, I'm sorry, I lost my place. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
They're saying ADHD is more it affects your frontal lobe. So EF is all in your frontal lobe is what they're talking about. And so the one with ADHD, they're talking about how it affects the impulse and your self-control. Okay. But it does not affect your working memory. However, those with autism, they were talking about how it affects that planning, your working memory, your self-control, and how it was talking about those things. And what they did was they used multiple tests, but they used the DMS-4. At the time it was 4, not 5.
Right.
And they used task of low memory to high memory. They use task as if you're going to draw a circle and you're like, okay, you're drawing a circle. Can you do other things as you're trying to draw a circle? Doing some of those metacognitive studies. And it was so cool how to see that those with and they talked about how those with ADHD and autism, you have autism affecting this part of the EF, and then you have your ADHD affecting the other part of your EF. So if you have a child with both, you're going to see all those EF skills really, really affected, as whereas you may not see the working memory or some of those other things affected depending on what your child is diagnosed with. And I thought that was
Mhm.
real. They don't teach you that in
That's
school.
no, but and that actually then helps me though, because my child has both ADHD and um, autism, and is considered high functioning autism. And I can see here in the chat that Jennifer says things that make you go, yeah, yeah. High functioning autism kids have greater struggles with EF. Makes total sense, and that's exactly where my child is. And so it's kind of making me understand that, okay, I need to step back and find some ways to address the EF skills and try to figure out how to, honestly, I may have to just, do what I can to take care of them a lot myself as the parent, because where are you going to get the therapy that's going to address EF skills?
You're not.
You're
It's
not.
so hard to diagnose, and there's no certification that those are actually just like you can get certified in just autism, you can get
Mhm,
certified in ADHD, but what I found, I may be corrected years down the road or maybe days, but I have not found just an EF certification. It's
mhm,
hard to diagnose because a lot of times EF is a subcategory or sub skill that is lacking in multiple disabilities, not just with autism. It's in
mhm,
ODD, it's in OCD, it's in autism, it's in, you know, ID, which is intellectual disabilities, mild, moderate, severe.
mhm,
Um, so in its own, it's as you said, it's hard. The field isn't calling for it yet. The field
mhm,
is not saying, "Oh, hey, we have a high case of just EF. Now we need to create the education to go with it." Um,
mhm.
I think as times and years goes down the road, I think they're going to find better.
And yeah, and this may be the place where we are um, now going to be on the forefront, because our child has difficulty in these areas, and there needs to be something
Mhm.
to help um, with that. Uh, um, and Jennifer says yes, and many will tell you that it's just a case of your child's immaturity or asynchronous development. Oh boy, been there, done that, and had that thrown in my face a time or two.
The thing is, I'm not a doctor, but
Uh-huh.
going on a slight tangent, immaturity is in a lot of ways an irrelevant. It's an opinion.
Yeah.
How do you define immaturity? There's no test to define immaturity. Someone
Mm-mm.
who is 6 years old, you, mm, mm.
Yeah, you're gonna find it depends on yeah. Grr. And I would venture to say,
It's like
you brought up a great point there, Jennifer. I
you
would venture to say
did.
that the maturity is somewhat dependent upon a child's environment.
It is in some ways your nurture and
Mhm.
your nature, and it
Yep.
is. Someone who there's a story as known as I don't remember her name, but she was locked in a closet for years until she was found as an adult. And I know
Oh
everybody
my.
knows the story. Um,
Mm.
but she was like severely disabled mentally because she was not exposed to a lot of things, and that just talks
Right.
about nature versus nurture. But the thing is if I was never exposed to some of the things that we see within our own culture, doesn't
Mhm.
make me immature or mature. It just makes me say, "Hey, I'm not exposed." So how do you define immaturity? How do you define without going into current age versus mental age? I just
Mhm.
mm.
Which is another place, because I've been told that my son, because of his, is going to be 2 years, his current age may be 12, but he is going to be, probably 2 to 3 years behind that in his maturity or whatever. And it's like, okay, but you can find kids that are 5 years old and seem like they're an adult,
Right,
and others that
exactly.
are 16 and you're like, boy.
Boy, you
Yeah,
you
I have
know?
2 older sons, and sometimes I just look at them and I'm like, "You're supposed to be the older
Exactly.
one here."
Yes, immaturity is,
Ugh.
is it ambiguous? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, I think so, and isn't it just an adjective that we throw out there?
It is. It really is. There's no
So,
scientific proof.
mm-mm.
Nope.
There's no quantitative measure for it.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Exactly. That
there's a
has
big
been
word.
peer reviewed consistently.
Exactly.
So
But
I'm
then we
just
got it.
saying.
Yeah, and so we come back to it, it's like, okay, so what are we gonna do?
Right.
If there's not a therapy out there that's gonna help us with this,
Right.
what do we as parents do?
Um, I'm not a parent yet, but I do teach. Um, my middle schools and high schoolers, even if they don't have autism, they actually struggle with EF. Even the
Mhm.
neurotypical
Right.
do. But anyone who comes in my classroom, I make them go on errands. Here, go deliver
Mhm.
this to A point B and then C, and give them the multi-step directions. We
Right.
actually file our own what you call it, or file our own worksheets. So
Mhm.
they got confused. I'm like, why are we putting the March 1st when February is underneath? Because when you file, you always put the most current date first. So not only
Right.
they have to go by the month, they have to go by the date, and now they have to go by the year because the school year is 2019, 2020. So they're like,
Right. Exactly.
hold on. So that's working in we
Mhm.
play memory games. Those
Mhm.
memory games are phenomenal. They're like, why? We play who has games, which is a lot of
Mhm.
fun with big crowds. Like you give them a card, who has 5 times 5, and someone else goes, I have 25. Who has 6 times 6? But they're sitting there still. Not only you're reading, you're working your
Mhm.
working memory. I have these kids with agendas. Okay, you're going to make
Mhm.
your schedule today within reason.
Mhm.
Peer Buddy is another good one. I love
Oh,
Peer
yeah.
Buddy. Peer
Oh,
Buddy is awesome.
I we had one of the best peer buddies, and then she moved. Oh, it was heartbreaking.
No, that is
It was
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking for a little guy. But
Aw.
yeah, when you can find a child that is excellent, I mean, oh, she was amazing. She was like a little ABA therapist. I was like,
No.
"You go, girl." Um, but yeah, I guess, that's where we're gonna have to come through and look at, all of these different EF difficulties, and
Correct.
then we're gonna have to sit out and try to figure out what it is that we can do to help each other,
Mhm.
help our children with these
Yeah.
problems.
Within a
Because
home setting and not just a school setting, because home is
exactly.
more difficult.
Mhm. 'Cause school is like your job where you have things, you
Mhm.
can translate those skills that you would have that would be EF skills, your agendas
Right.
and scheduling meetings and stuff like that,
Mhm.
to straight into the work area,
Mhm.
unless you have just a crazy job that doesn't like, okay, well, I'm gonna put it unless you're in, say, the entertainment industry, and TV where things just are, you know
Sporadic. Yeah.
It's very sporadic, very, very sporadic. Um, but even then, when you get on a project, your project is very, you know,
Correct.
scheduled out. But what do you do about being at home, cleaning your room, organization, things
Yep.
like that?
Chores,
And
that's why
that's
chores come in because they can make their own schedule, and,
mhm,
I'm gonna go ahead and brag on my mom for a sec. When we were growing up, she didn't care when our chores got done. You do your
mhm,
chores and you get it done, which never knew she was actually teaching us executive functioning skills because now we're planning when we do it. Okay, we have this deadline, but when do you
right,
do it? When do you implement it? So, way to go,
mhm.
mom.
Yeah, my mom did the same thing, but I have a fear. My sister and I both fear the little tiny, Tupperware containers
Mhm,
that you had the little tiny lid and they were only about yay big.
mhm.
My sister and I hate them to this day because
Why?
that was the chore thing. My mom would take, she would take, uh, note cards, and she would write the chore and then cut it up and put it in that little thing. It was up on top of the fridge, and we'd bring it down, and we'd have to draw. And of course, we're thinking, oh, please,
No.
please don't get mopping, or please don't get the
Right.
bathrooms.
My sister and I,
But, we did them.
we did. My mom really didn't have a schedule. We were just told to do it. And then between my sister and I, we worked out, hey, you get this if I get this time because I got this and this today. So my sister and actually learned how to collaborate with one another, which is really cool. But
yeah, that's all good. But my sister and I are not my sister.
I don't know. My sister and I are day and night, so maybe that's why it worked out.
Well,
sometimes.
my sister and I were
Sometimes,
day and night,
keyword.
but no, we had to draw because we never would have got it done.
So chores is a good one. What are some other ones? I'm just trying to think. Even doing projects, gardening. Gardening's another good one. Doing things with your dad. Maybe if you're in a multi spouse home and doing woodworking with your dad or wife, because it could be either or.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But woodworking, that's one because you have to plan from point A to point B. You're working your math skills. Board
Baking
games,
is the same way.
Baking, board games, because you can work different memories that way. It's just anything kind of like that. Or, hey, if your kid is old enough and understands a good bit, depending on where they're at and what your dynamics of your house are. Another one is like on Monday, hey, I need this and this done by Friday. And don't mention again and see what happens. And then help them that way because now you're extending that in functioning,
So it's like
that planning.
The longer projects that you have in school or the longer projects that you have at work kind of a thing. So
I think a lot of people do it and they just don't realize they're doing it. Because like with ABA, like we put terms to the behavior terms and people do it naturally. We're just like, hey, we just put a term to it. That's all we did.
Yeah.
But
one of the things that I look forward to is the next chapter that I'm diving into in here has to deal with is working memory. And I know my son has quite a bit of difficulty with working memory. So it's going to be interesting to read what they say about working memory and how to implement it. And one of the things I do like about this book is it does give you pages that you can copy and take to your teachers at school.
I can hardly wait till it was supposed to be here yesterday.
Yeah, well, things in the world.
It is.
The best laid plans of mice and men.
Right.
Oh, goodness.
Oh,
well,
man.
Next week, which we will be back next week, I think we'll continue on this and maybe work to look at some actual, maybe giving some step-by-step things and some have some visuals for people to see, like what we've come up with of things that you can do to help your children with the EF skills, and look more into some of the differences, not just the planning and organizing,
Correct.
but working memory. And then we'll go on down the list and see what we can find, because I know that we've been very scholarly in our approach up to this point, but I think this is a good point where we can get very, what's the word that I'm looking for? We're not looking at scholarly. We can actually put the rubber where the rubber meets the road. Practical. There you go. Thank you to our tech guy who is actually sitting over here and giving me the right word.
I was thinking experiences. So
okay, yeah, either or. We'll do it that way. Sounds good to me.
Just be fun and relaxing. I love it. I love how we are just so fun and relaxing, just raw and everything, and it makes it more fun.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Well, if you you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to get a hold of us, which Kelsey, I'll let you give those addresses.
Find us on Facebook.com/MySpectrumLife, Instagram.com MySpectrumLife, and then Twitter.com/MySpectrumLife1. That's the number 1. You can also email us at I think it's info@myspectrumlife.com.
com.
Yep.
Weari.com.
.com.
Yes.
Sorry.
And one thing, if you are listening to us on Facebook or on any of the other platforms that we have our podcast, do us a big favor. Head over to YouTube and give us a like on YouTube and help us build the subscribe. Sorry, it's a subscribe. Subscribe and like to help us build our YouTube channel as well. Because we want to be able to build this podcast on multiple platforms to be there for multiple people. So, well, yeah, it was fun tonight.
It was.
We will see y'all next time with some more fun ideas on those EF skills. Thanks, everybody. Good night.